Good morning. I am Xavier Brown, and I currently serve as the Executive Student Government Association Vice President, and as well as the pole mark for the Gamma Sigma chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I want to welcome you to our Black History program. Today is a special occasion as we will receive valuable insight concerning Black history and the integral importance of being an African American that is aware. That insight will come from none other than business executive, author, and educator, Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz. I encourage anyone present today to heed what is said before you and allow it to positively mold your perspective. As the great Malcolm X once said, change is only good if you can change in a good way. At this time, let us rise for the performance of our Negro National Anthem by our esteemed Vesper Choir, which will be followed by our invocation, brought to you by our Miss University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, Caitlin Peterson.
Heavenly Father, I come to you today to say thank you. Thank you for this day. We thank you for the challenges of our past, but we're also reminded, God, that we have a future in you, God, that is filled with prosperity. We ask that today be filled with memories. We ask that something is said today that will resonate with each one of us today to bring about change in our communities and in those around us. We ask that you forgive us for our sins. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Amen.
We want to say thank you to our Vesper Choir as well as our Miss University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff for that wonderful invocation. At this time, we will have greetings from our Student Government Association President, Trenton Wheels, followed by the purpose from our Chief of Staff of the Student Government Association, Caleb Williams.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right, I'm Trent Wills, and I humbly serve as the Executive President of the Student Government Association here at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed faculty, distinguished guests, and beloved students, welcome to the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff Black Histories program. Today, we gather to celebrate and honor the rich history of African American culture, resilience, and contributions that have shaped our nation and continue to inspire generations. It is with great honor and privilege that we welcome our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz, daughter of iconic civil rights leader Malcolm X, and Dr. Betty Shabazz. Dr. Shabazz is not only a renowned author, educator, and activist, but also a beacon of hope and empowerment of countless individuals around the world. In the spirit of Black History, let us come together as a community to celebrate our shared heritage, to honor those who came before us, and to reaffirm the commitment to creating a future where every individual has the opportunity to thrive regardless of race, gender, or background. Thank you, Dr. Shabazz, for gracing us with your wisdom and insight, and thank you to all who have joined us today to commemorate this special occasion. Together, let us continue to learn, grow, and strive toward a brighter future. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. You know, I feel that this time is a time that, aside from graduation and aside from homecoming and those big events, this is one of the biggest events on our campus. This is our time to learn about our culture. This is our time to talk about the history of our esteemed historically black college and university. We've had many figures come to this campus. The late Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King, Michelle Obama came to speak at our convocation, and now we have Dr. Shabazz here to speak to us today. Many esteemed speakers have come to our campus. You know, this is a time that we all can come out here and come together. We have our Greek organizations here, the National Panhellenic Council, and this is the time to truly learn about our history. It was at one of these events, it was at an event like this where I took up the mantle and wanted to learn more about black history. I learned about Silas Hunt, a figure who, after fighting in World War II, after fighting in Europe, came back to our university and came here to graduate with a Bachelor of Arts. All those esteemed black people or African Americans who came back here after fighting wars in Europe, thousands of them flooded to our campus and came right here to our university to get an education. We have a lot of history here, and it is at programs like this where we truly can appreciate our history. I want to call everyone in here to go out. The Lord says, go out as sheep amongst wolves. You will go out and teach everyone about our black history, teach everyone about our university, become disciples for our university. It is a verse that I recite to myself often, 1 Timothy, that says, let no one despise you of your youth, but go out and set the example in youth, in purity, and in faith. I want to call all of you to go out and teach everyone of how great our university truly is, of how great these programs are, of how great your education was here on this campus. And I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank our chancellor. I want to thank Dean Dorsey for giving me this opportunity to speak. And I want to end you with a quote by Ronald Reagan, or a quote that I live by Ronald Reagan. And it's kind of slipping my mind here for a second, I'm sorry. But I want to end you and tell you to go out and be sheep among wolves and be disciples for our university. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent and Caleb, for those wonderful greetings and purpose. At this time, we will have our introduction of speaker by Ms. Jade Walker Wilson, followed by a musical selection through our Vesper Choir. And following that, the next voice you will hear will be that of Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz.
Good morning. My name is Jade Walker Wilson. I currently serve as the chapter president for the Delta Eta chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz is an award-winning author, educator, and producer who has authored 5 historical novels and served as an advisor for PBS's acclaimed film, Prince Among Slaves. Currently, she is producing a television series based on her latest book, The Awakening of Malcolm X, with Sony Pictures Television's TriStar. She chairs the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Educational Center Board of Trustees, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her efforts include curriculum development at the City University of New York to promote higher education for underserved communities. She's also founded youth programs promoting social justice and personal empowerment, and dedicated herself to institution building and intergenerational leadership development with the tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Shabazz holds a Master's of Science in Education and Human Resource Development from Fordham University and a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from SUNY at New Paltz. And she also serves as an adjunct professor for John Jay College of Criminal Justice. She's recognized for her contributions with an honorary doctorate of humane letters from Rochester University. As an inaugural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Fellow, she teaches We the People, embodying the values of empowerment and inclusion instilled by her parents. Additionally, she is involved in various committees, organizations, including SUNY at New Paltz College SOAR Higher Cabinet Committee and the Equal Rights Amendment Coalition. She is also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and serves as a trustee for the Harlem Symphony Orchestra. Dr. Shervaz emphasizes empowerment and inclusion in her teaching and scholarship.
Who'll be a witness for my Lord? Who'll be a witness for my Lord? Who'll be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord?
I'll be a witness for my Lord. 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 There was a man of the Pharisees. His name was Nicodemus, and he didn't believe. The same came to Christ by night, wanted to be taught out of human sight. Nicodemus was a man who desired to know how a man can be born when he is old. Christ told Nicodemus as a friend,
Man, you must be born again.
he said, marvel not,
And if you
be what
repent, believe, and be baptized,
then you'll be a witness for my Lord. You'll be a witness for my Lord. You'll be a witness for my Lord. Soul is a witness for my Lord. You read about Samson. From his birth, he was the strongest man that ever lived on earth. Way back yonder in ancient times, he killed 10,000 of the Philistines. Then old Samson went a wandering about. Samson's strength was never found out. Terror's voice hands upon his knees.
she said,
Tell me where your strength lies, if you please. But though Samson's wife, she's not so fair, Samson said,
cut off of my head.
cut it off.
Take my head just as clean as your hand, and my strength will come like a natural man.
Samson was a witness for my Lord. Samson was a witness for my Lord. Samson was a witness for my Lord. Saul is a witness for my Lord. There's another witness.
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 There's another witness for my Lord. My soul is a witness for my Lord.
This time, let us rise and give a round of applause as we welcome Dr. Ilyasa Shervaz to the stage.
Wow, that is incredible. Wow. Vesper Choir. Woo-wee. Let's give them a round of applause. Wow, that was so beautiful. You know, I think about the Jubilee singers, you know, that they were just young college students who had been enslaved. And they came and they crafted these gospel spirituals to tell the world about the horrors and the injustice that was being done to our ancestors, to our people. And wow, you just brought all of that to life. So God bless you and thank you so much for sharing. Let's give them a round of applause, please. What a great morning it is, University of Arkansas, Pine Bluffs. I love the place. I think it was my first time here. So I love the place, and I bring you good wishes from my family. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is an honor to be with you as one of 6 daughters of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz, and wherever I go, I always acknowledge my sisters. My father was almost 6'5". My mother was almost 5'9", and they had very tall, opinionated daughters, 6 of us. And so if my sisters thought that you thought I was the only daughter of Malcolm X, I'd never hear the end of it. So I come bringing good wishes from my 5 sisters. So it's an honor to be with you as one of Malcolm and Betty's daughters and to be able to speak with you as your keynote speaker for Black History Month. Yeah. Chancellor Lawrence Alexander, thank you for this invitation to speak with your students, faculty, and community. You guys are very fortunate to have him. Frank Dorsey, Dean of Student Involvement and Leadership, thank you. And everyone else who helped to make it possible for us to gather this morning and fellowship in this warm, beautiful, and historic space. I'm reminded of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, whom we all know established Black History Week. And he said in the 1950s, the biggest race is to see who will control the minds of young people. And so I say to you, young people, recognize and own your power. And so first and foremost, as we find ourselves in the middle of Black History Month, I would like to give praise to our ancestors, the refined, industrious, indigenous men and women of African ancestry, Black, indigenous, people of color, those who have not been honored in history, those whose incredible stories have not been properly documented, stories that have been erased. We give praise to the countless men and women who birthed thriving civilizations and yet endured physical and psychological traumas, who endured the largest forced migration of a people in the history of humankind, and yet we still stand and we prosper, and we just give you all a round of applause. We are strong, we are vigilant, and we are interconnected as a human family. In 2024, we are by no means the first generation to be haunted by the memory of injustice, questioning whether the dream is still alive. Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the names go on and on and on. In 1837, the same year that the first HBCU, Cheyney University of Pennsylvania, was founded, a young girl by the name of Charlotte Fortin was born in Philadelphia. Charlotte went on to become a famous Black abolitionist, educator, and poet. About 170 years ago, Charlotte Fortin matriculated at Salem Normal School, which is now known as Salem State University. And last month, I stumbled upon her journals, her diary. Salem State is close to where I currently teach a course. Charlotte was one of the first African Americans to graduate from the institution since its opening. In her journal, she described her time at Salem State as the happiest of my life. And this transcription is during the time of slavery, the enslavement of human beings in all its physical and psychological terrors, where Black people were targeted, hunted, trafficked, tortured, held in bondage against their will, under the color of law. It was the law of the land. And even as a free person, you'd risk being sold into this type of madness, this type of existence. And, and I often say, it is our responsibility to tell the truths of those who were targeted, trafficked, held in bondage, raped, sodomized, tortured. It is our responsibility to tell the story, because if we don't, they will be reduced as just nameless and faceless slaves. But when we understand that we made these significant contributions in spite of that terror, had it not been for these contributions of our enslaved foreparents, not one American today would have the opportunity to call the leader of the free world, the land of milk and honey, their home. And so we owe it to our ancestors to control that narrative. And so this young lady, Charlotte Fortin, wrote in her journey that she was fortunate enough to receive the instruction of the best and kindest teachers. And the few friends I've made, she said, are warm and true. Yet, despite her positive experience in school, she remained haunted by the nightmare of this oppressive system we call racism. For me, it was so fascinating to read her writings and to be transported back to the days of her experience in 1852, just a young black girl. And this young teen, Charlotte, I envisioned her sitting at her desk, sharing her joys, her fears, and her perspectives. She said, at times I feel it almost impossible not to despair of there ever being a better, brighter day for us. None but those who experience it can know what it is. This constant, galling sense of cruel injustice and wrong. I cannot help feeling it very often, she said. It intrudes upon my happiest moments and spreads a dark, deep gloom over everything. When we look at the world full of hatred and bigotry, it's easy to question whether there's a reason to hold on to hope. As a young black girl in the 1850s, Charlotte had every reason to lose hope of there ever being a better, brighter day for herself, her family, and her friends. She had every reason to believe that change would never happen. And it is so important. I know I don't have to tell you, being students at an HBCU, sometimes we say, oh, I don't want to see those movies, I don't want to learn about some of this history, but it's our history. And if we don't learn about it and teach it in its truth, it will be washed and thrown away. And so 2 years later, there's nothing worse than someone else coming and having more information about our history than us. 2 years later, in 1856, Charlotte turned to the question of despair, where she wrote, "In the bitter, passionate feelings of my soul, again and again, there arises the questions, when, oh when, shall this cease? Is there no help?" And as I flipped through the pages reading her diary, I found where she had a change of heart and wrote, "Conscience answers, it is wrong. It is ignoble to despair. It is dishonorable. Let us labor earnestly with conviction and faithfully to acquire knowledge to break down the barriers of prejudice and oppression." And so in the 1850s, the law of the land, when she wrote, was, "Let us take courage, never ceasing to work, hoping and believing that if not for us, for another generation, there is a better, brighter day in store when slavery and prejudice shall vanish before the glorious light of liberty and truth. When the rights of every colored man shall everywhere be acknowledged and respected, and he shall be treated as a man and a brother." And so just imagine those who lived generations of terror with no signs of hope around them. And what does she say? She says to fight despair, we must continue to hold on to hope. That if not for us, another generation, there is a better, brighter day in store. And so, like Charlotte Ford, we must not let ourselves become crippled by despair or blindsided by divisive tactics that deprive us of liberty and truth. My father said the future belongs to those who prepare for it today, and we must not let that dream die. As I thought about speaking at an HBCU during Black History Month, I was reminded of a verse in the Quran that says, God does not teach. God does not change the condition of a nation until they take it upon themselves to change themselves. So we have to understand this information so that we can change it, because no one is going to come and change it for us. We can sit back and we can complain and talk about all of these horrible things happening to us, but they won't change until we come together and strategize on how we are going to eliminate them. We lose hope the moment we stop dreaming, the moment we stop building. Education fails to fulfill its purpose when we lose sight of our purpose as students and educators. Dr. King, in his 1968 book, The Trumpet of Conscience, put it this way. He said, yes, I'm personally the victim of deferred dreams, of blasted hopes, but in spite of that, I still have a dream, because you can't give up on life. If you lose hope, somehow you lose the vitality that keeps life moving. You lose that courage to be. That quality helps you to go on in spite of it all. And so today he said, I still have a dream. Continuing the legacy of my father, Malcolm X, and my mother, Dr. Betty Shabazz, is why I also have a dream. In spite of the challenges I faced in life, are by no means any comparison to those of my foreparents. My parents were visionaries. Their focus on human rights and education inspires me to help others dream of a better world, and more importantly, to be willing to put in the necessary work to make those dreams a reality. Now, on February 21st, we're going to have our 59th commemoration for Malcolm X. I'm the chairperson of the Shabazz Center, where my father was assassinated. And every year we have a big program, and I invite you to tune in to YouTube or our Facebook page to watch it. On February 21st, 1965, my mother, sisters, and I witnessed the assassination of her husband, our father, Malcolm X. My mother, pregnant, placed her entire body over my three sisters and me to protect us from gunfire and to make sure we would not see the terror before our eyes. Just 1 week prior, they lay in bed together, asleep as husband and wife, when a firebomb was thrown in the nursery of our home where my sisters and I slept as babies. My father was 39 years old. My mother was 29 years old, just a few years older than some of you, than most of you here. And despite, would you give me a favor? Can I get close to my time? I was told that I should speak for 3 hours. I'm kidding. But despite having witnessed her husband's assassination, just a young woman, having witnessed her husband's assassination, 21 bullets shot into his body on February 21st. Sister Betty never gave in to bitterness or despair. She was just a few years older than some of you young ladies. Even though as a young wife and a young mother, she had every right. She had 4 babies and was pregnant with my youngest sisters, the twins. And as challenging as life appeared for her, she safeguarded her husband's legacy and raised all 6 of her children with private schools for 6. And no grants, no loans, no nothing. She was a smart woman. Summer camp in Vermont with Native American and Quaker values about coexisting and living off the earth. Music and dance lessons, yoga. I was taught the oneness of God and therefore the oneness of humanity. We never had to rely on others to determine our self-worth. I learned about the significant contributions of the African diaspora, women, and Islam made to the world. With this strong foundation, I'm able to see you as a reflection of me and me as a reflection of you, to love you as much as I love myself. Because if we don't know how to love ourselves, we can never love anyone else properly. If I am unable to love and value myself, I cannot help or truly love anyone else. And so I'm grateful for that tutelage of learning about the significant contributions that women made to the world, of learning about the significant contributions that the African diaspora as a first world nation, not as a third world, made to the world, and learning about the significant contributions that Islam made to the world. I hope that I am keeping your attention. My mother knew this instinctively and was fiercely protective of all 6 of her girls, shielding us from false ideas about our father and history. Had my mother become a victim, woe is me kind of person, life is too difficult, there are too many problems for me, had she been broken by despair, blaming others without recourse, I would not be standing here with you this morning appearing to be healthy. The Malcolm you learned about is not the Malcolm we've come to know in his truth. Rather, this young, inspiring widow safeguarded the accurate legacy of her husband for the benefit of future generations. And she kept her husband's essence, his love, values, and humanity integral in our household. She did not want her 6 daughters to suffer from the sudden loss of our father's physical presence and love. And though he was physically absent, compassion, my mother made sure her husband remained present in our household conversations for as long as I can remember. I knew my father loved me. I remember his beautiful smile, his love of jazz music, literature, poetry. This was very important to my mother, that her girls knew their father, because it was very intentional that he was gunned down so abruptly. But my mother did not want it to have any effect on her girls. And I share this so that you can understand the significance of all of this and that you can incorporate this into your lives as you continue throughout your journey. I knew that my father was a student of history, religion, nature, the arts, that he was a Renaissance man. I knew him to be a wise man with impeccable integrity who was ultimately led by his service to God. From such a foundation, my values were formed. We should know what our values are, right? We should know our identity so that we can determine who we're going to allow in our space, what kind of jobs we are going to have. It is extremely important. I now understand why my mother protected us from the negative and false depictions of this icon, Malcolm X, so that his legacy would be accurately realized for the benefit of this generation. You see, my father burst onto the civil rights movement as a young man in his 20s when young people were demonstrating, marching, and protesting for civil rights. My father, also in his 20s, came along and said, we demand our human right. Wait, what did he say? Can anybody help me? That's right, by any means necessary. He said, we demand our human rights as your brother. There's no asking, right? We demand our human rights as ordained by God, right? So he was a servant of God. He didn't fear man, he feared God, and he lived by those values. And so the challenge in emphasizing human rights, my father was saying that our capacity to care must reach beyond ethnicity and religion. It is our moral compass that reveals injustice and works toward justice. All right, so I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom of my 3-hour presentation. Because I am at an HBCU. And I just want to point out this. To keep the dream alive, we have to face trials and tribulations, just as we sing in the Black National Anthem. Stony the road we trod. This was written by people during that time. Bitter, the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Sometimes we feel like that today. Yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our people sighed. We cannot forget who we are. Okay, as I go down to the home run. Today, the struggles we face may bear new names, but at their core, they remain the same. My father said truth does not change, only our awareness of it. Systemic inequality continues to harm communities. Institutional racism continues to devastate families, and so forth and so on. I really wanted to talk about education, but maybe somebody will ask me a question, if there is one question that will be asked at the end of this. You can't fall for divisive tactics. We talk about Malcolm, we talk about Martin. Malcolm and Martin were brothers. My family and the King family grew up very close. In my day, we were taught that we had to choose between Tupac and Biggie Smalls. In our great-grandparents' day, it was Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. And today, it is Malcolm or Martin. But young people, we have to understand that we're accepting both, because otherwise it is a divisive tactic. And to put it in perspective of us, right? My father said, if you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and you pull it out 6 inches, the knife is still in my back. You know, people say, get over racism, get over slavery, get over all these things. The knife is still in my back. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. There's an open wound. Progress comes in healing the wound that the blow made, but you have to make sure that this wound is addressed. You have to do that yourselves. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Okay? As humans, we are not here to survive. We are here to thrive. We are not here to follow. We are here to lead. We are here for a purpose and with a mission to enjoin good and forbid evil. We are here to be witnesses unto mankind and to write the next chapter of our human story with optimism, courage, and a futuristic thinking. And we have to be strategic. We have to be strategic. You have an opportunity now developing relationships. I hope that you cultivate them and work together toward making some kind of change, because that's why we are here. Allow me to leave you with the words of the philosopher, poet, mystic Rumi. You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You were not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shabazz, for speaking the truth. We will now take questions from the floor and signify by raising your hand if you have a question. I will pass you the mic.
Okay, my name is Gary Wallace. I'm the sophomore class president. Everybody knows I can answer the question. So my question is, well, referencing, like the conversation that our parents had with some of us about the birds and bees. And even when 2019, when we had a high peak in police brutality, some of my parents sat down and talked with us about the necessary things to do if we were caught in situations with dealing with the police. So your father, being one of the fathers of the civil rights movement, when did he sit down and talk to you guys about racism? Because when we all come into this world, we think the world is of land and milk and honey, and we're innocent. But until we get a taste of life and things like that, what was your reaction to it? Like, okay, this is real. So, yeah.
So, my father was assassinated. My oldest sister was 6. My other sister was 4. I was 2. I had another sister who was just born, and my mother was pregnant with twins. And that's why I give all the glory to my mother. God first, but also to my mother, because she made sure that we understood who Malcolm was as our father and as a human being. We learned about his character, his morals, his principles, his values. And, you know, it wasn't until I went to college that I realized that people have been misinformed on who Malcolm was, right? For Malcolm to challenge a government that was historically unjust, not only to his people in this country, but the world over, required a lot of courage, required a lot of faith, required a lot of love and passion. And that's what I learned about my father. Never would anyone, what my mother did is make sure that we were raised in this bubble of love. And so in that bubble of love, I learned that I was a reflection of you and you were a reflection of me, and I love you just as I love myself. I love every single person in here. Never saw you in my life, but when I look, I'm like, oh my God, I love you. You know, that is how I was raised. So my father did not live long enough, or I didn't live long enough for him to give, I don't think he would have had to have given me that kind of pep talk, because those were the issues that he was challenging to rid. And that is the reason that my mother safeguarded her husband's legacy. That is why my father was killed. That is why I do the work that I do. When I, you know, as a young person, I was in high school, I was in a girls' prep school, and we used to mentor young people in a group home. And I would teach them math, and I didn't understand why they were so docile. They were not animated. I went to college, I did the same thing in a lockup facility. And as time went on, I realized that they did not have the opportunity to know that they were worthy of love. They didn't know anything about themselves that said they were worthy of love. But not just for Black people to know that, to know our history and so forth, for all people. You know, even when we look at Black History Month, what does that say to us? Unless our history is included in the curriculum throughout the year, and then we get to celebrate additionally for Black History Month to highlight all of our glory and contributions to humanity. You know, if in our books we're talking about American history, it should be Black, African American history, Latin American history, Asian American history, Native American history. Our books aren't complete unless it is inclusive and filled with historical truths and facts And that's all we want to do, and that is why I'm in education. So that we don't have to continue to give stories about this is what you do if the police pull you over. Are you kidding me? So hopefully we will be cognizant and understand the importance of learning all of this information, especially now while you're in college, because you don't always have the opportunity to continue to learn at this leisure. We are perpetual students, but we won't always have the time to sit back and be amongst fellow students to get all the information from our professors.
So you mentioned how your mother kept you in a bubble of love. And so, in watching the movies and reading the book, we don't really get any perspective of the children. So I guess my question to you is, being the child of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz, did you encounter, I guess, jealousy, envy, bullying from your peers growing up? And if so, how did you deal with that?
You know, that is funny. I was going to say absolutely not, but actually, yes, I did. You know, I remember there was a boy in my neighborhood that all the girls liked, and one day I came home on this big, huge school bus, and I write about this in my book, Growing Up X. I came home on this big, huge school bus, and there were girls, they were called the Chain Gang, and they would come down into our neighborhood, and they were going to beat me up. And I was petrified, because I didn't know how to fight. And so, out of nowhere, comes my mother down the stairs like an angel. and she saved me. And you know, I'm so grateful because they could have really beat me up. You know? But you know, my mother, like again, was very overprotective, and she really, you know, kept us very protected and guarded and all that stuff. So I don't remember the first part of your question, which was important. Do you want to just repeat that part?
Well, just whether or not you had to deal with the jealousy
Oh,
of
yeah.
you being Malcolm X's daughter.
Yeah, but for the most part, where I went to school, people respected Malcolm. At least my friends' parents did. They really respected him tremendously. They used to call me in their study, probably to see what is this, you know, young girl like. Thank you for your question.
Hello, Dr. Shabazz. I just want to say thank you, and we are very honored to have you at this university speaking at this time. Before I ask my question, I do want to make this statement. You know, in mainstream media, they try to make the civil rights movement look like it was just years ago, as if it was in the early 1900s. And we all know that's not true, otherwise you'd be up here 80 years old, and you are not. You look very good for your age, you know, black and crack. But I wanted to ask, growing up, since you didn't really grow up with your father a lot, what is something that stuck out to you that your mother taught you about him, even if it was a quote or just a song that you liked that you carry on into this day?
Oh, that is really wow. That's a good question. You know, I was really so young, but because my mother did such an amazing job by keeping our father's memory alive in our home. We had his hat, his shoes. I was the tallest, biggest feet, so I would wear his size 14 shoes and kind of clomp around the house. But my feet weren't big enough for the 14. I don't wear 14. But I heard somebody go, whoa! I would just clomp around, you know, and we had all of his things in our home. But my mother would tell this story when I was, you know, a little girl, that I would wait for my father to come home, and when he would, you know, because I was 2, everybody else would be sleeping, and the baby, of course, and that we would go into the den. He would have all these papers to read and these cookies that she would make, these homemade cookies. And usually people, you know, I said they were oatmeal raisin. I don't like oatmeal raisin cookies. So many people always send me oatmeal raisin cookies. I don't like them. I'm not an oatmeal raisin cookie person at all. But anyway, so she would tell the story that when my father was killed, we were staying at the home of Sidney Poitier at the time. I don't know if you know who he is. Oh, good. His wife at that time was Juanita Poitier, and his first wife. And so we stayed at their home, and that I would go come downstairs and open up the blinds looking for my father. And so she would take a plate and break a cookie in half so that I would grab the cookie and be distracted by it. And I would take the cookie with me to bed. So now I love cookies so much. And the challenge is, you look beautiful. The challenge is, everybody looks incredible in here, I just have to say. But the challenge is, kicking the habit of cookies, But that, I have a lot of beautiful memories of my father. I remember his beautiful smile. I even remember him, the intonation of how he would call my name, Ilyasa, and they said he was the only person that I would listen to. Anybody else is deaf ears.
Hello. Hello, my name is Leona Shields. I'm a sophomore here at the university, majoring in plant science with emphasis in food research. I have been fighting this war of intersectionality, and to be a woman and to be black is very difficult. So
to be a woman and to be black is very difficult?
Yes,
it's only difficult if you put that out there in the universe.
Oh, no.
Let's take it back.
My question was, do you have any advice for maybe not battling, since I'm taking it back, but going through being a woman and being black and also supporting our men?
I think that, first of all, you are in the space where you should be able to find other women, friends who have like minds, right? And be able to create whatever it is you want to happen. The reason that we learn about history is so that we can be fortified with the strength, right, and direction and tutelage on how to live our lives. If there's something that you want, recognize the power that you have to get it. Have your values in check. Even if it is looking in the mirror and saying, damn, I look good, or I am great, or whatever it is. And having the support of the women, the sisters who are around you. Yeah. Because only you can do that for yourself. No one else can do it. Thank you, sir. Well, you gentlemen are looking pretty okay too up there. Yeah.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Chloe Brackens. I am a junior mathematics major here at the university. I also currently serve as a vice president of the Delta Eta chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as well as a vice president of the National Society of Black Engineers. So this is my question. So as we see now, there's a lot of legislators coming out that's saying that, are limiting the Black history taught in school. So to me, that means that we can start teaching it at home, in church, in these different places of community. So what is your advice to the community and to us as young people as we try to continue to teach our history?
I think it's extremely important. That's what my mother did. She was a young woman. She had someone come and teach us about the significant contributions that the African diaspora as a first world nation made to the world, the women, the significant contribution made to the world, the significant contribution Islam made to the world. Those are three categories at the bottom of our totem pole, but yet I'm very confident with who I am. So I think it's important. If schools aren't doing it, we have to do it ourselves. We do it at the Shabazz Center. There's a thing called Freedom School Curriculum, and it's a curriculum that teaches truth. So we're not going to sit around and wait for someone to say it's okay to learn the truth, right? My father said only a fool would sit back and allow his enemy to teach his children, right? So we have to take responsibility and make sure, first of all, that people understand learning about our history is great. Scientists, anthropologists, archaeologists have determined that civilization began in Africa over 200,000 years ago. They've uncovered the ruins in the pyramids. They've uncovered ruins, monuments, superior architecture, all kinds of things. So perhaps we should make sure that we learn about the kingdoms of Benin, the kingdoms of Mali, the kingdoms of Timbuktu. Mansa Musa, everybody should know who he is. You know, so we have to make sure that we are sharing this information that the Greeks and the Romans learned from us, right? And so we have to make sure that we do that. And when we do, it is an opportunity for us as the educators to instill the values of honesty, compassion, integrity, maybe forgiveness, right? It is our opportunity to instill values rather than to continue and have young people, you know, shooting, you know, the violence, right? And the self-destruction that we sometimes find ourselves, like my father found himself at a crossroads in his life, but yet when he was arrested at the age of 20, he was able to address all of those challenges from which he ran. His identity as a black person and against the backdrop of Jim Crow when his father had been lynched and his mother had been taken and put in an institution against her will, and no one was there to comfort him when his teacher told him, his favorite teacher told him while he was at the top of his class in an all-white school, top of his class president, that no, you cannot be a lawyer, Malcolm. You can only be a carpenter and use your hands because you're nothing but the N-word. You know, that's saying your life does not matter. And that's a lot of pain. And if you don't have smart, forward-thinking, radical adults to bring you back in and say it's okay, then we can lose our children.
First, I'd like to say, my name is Mary Hester Clifton. I'm in Institutional Advancement, Office of Communications. First, I'd like to say thank you so much. The words of wisdom and encouragement, fantastic. And I am a great student of history. I think it's so important for us to know ancient, past history, but also I've become cognizant that history is happening now.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I was reading where the current administration is asking for civil rights, the family of civil rights leaders to come to the White House. And Malcolm X's family was in that list. So I was wondering if you could share any insights on what that's about, why are they doing it, or has it happened? You know, I'm a scanner, you know, because I just sort of scan the news to try to keep up. So anything that you can tell us about what that is, and is the importance of it, or the goal, I'd appreciate it.
That's a good question. Well, I didn't go because I was at USC with Rodney King's daughter, and she didn't go as well. My sister went, and I don't know that there was a large turnout, but I know that they're going to do another invitation. I would be curious to know why we are really here. Yeah, and hope that, you know, it is for some real purpose. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
We'll take one last question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sora, Doctor, for that inspiration. The young lady, Sora, sort of asked what I was going to ask. As we leave this place inspired to preserve history, but also to become disciples, I think is one of the gentlemen put it. I was going to ask you to share some tangible advice for the students to keep this momentum going and things that we can do without waiting on others to give us permission to keep this movement going.
You know, I always think the quote from Dr. Carter G. Woodson, because we know his intentions were so, you know, it was so inspirational to make sure that we were able to see us. When he said, the biggest race in 1954 is to see who will control the minds of young people, and that hasn't changed. Because sometimes we find ourselves marching, protesting. Look at all of what we seem to have accomplished with the Black Lives Matter movement. where 50 states were proclaiming during the height of the pandemic when we were questioning our mortality. But yet it was young people who organized these marches, 50 states in this country of people coming together, the human family, proclaiming that Black Lives Matter, 18 countries abroad of people coming together proclaiming that Black Lives Matter. But what happened? And so I would suggest that you recognize the power that you have and you give it your all. That you have to be strategic even how you live your lives. So that when you go back after marching, demonstrating, protesting for days and days, that you don't go back and say, well, damn, what did I accomplish? What was I marching for? Because, you know what, you could go to a party, but if you're going and you're marching and you're sacrificing and making this contribution, you should have a checklist on what it is you want to accomplish. And that is something that we can do in organizations, in groups. When you want to go fast, go alone. When you want to go far, go together. That's that African proverb.
All right, let's have one more round of applause for Dr. Shabazz. We just thank you so much for being here today, and we think that, you know, all those words that you said were so wonderful and allowed us to really spark some conversation that'll go with us beyond this building today. So, following this, we will now have our closing remarks by our Chancellor, Dr. Lawrence B. Alexander.
Wow. And the church said, Amen. Amen. We'd like to thank, certainly, Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz for coming here and sharing with us. Certainly, as I said when we met, I am honored that you have chosen to join us here today for this special occasion. And we thank you on behalf of our students, our faculty, and our staff, and alumni, and all who are present. Thank you for sharing these words of wisdom with us. As a renowned scholar and author and advocate, Professor Shabazz brought a wealth of knowledge and insight that undoubtedly enriched our commemoration of Black History Month. Thank you so much for traveling all the way to Arkansas to join us for this special occasion and share this with us. Please come forward. We'd like to give you this token of our appreciation, just to say thank you once again for sharing with us. I would also like to express my appreciation to all of you for joining with us today and supporting this great event and celebrating this important day in the life of the University of Arkansas and Pine Bluff. And this important month, which is Black History Month, and this important year, which we continue to celebrate the 150th year of our university's existence. I'd like to thank all the dignitaries who are here. Wherever you are, just raise your hand, because you know you're a dignitary and you're always welcome in our midst, and we're glad to have you. But on this 150th anniversary, we've been celebrating now for almost an entire year, 150 years that we have been here as a university, established in 1873. I have to say this because this is Black History Month. Established in 1873, in the decade following the abolition of slavery. So glad to hear you talk about us needing to talk about slavery. We were established in the decade following the abolition of slavery as an institute for former slaves and their children to have access and opportunity to a higher education. So today, as we celebrate Black History Month and we celebrate that history when we began as Branch Normal and later moved in 1927 to transition to Arkansas Agricultural, Mechanical, and Normal College before it merged in 1972. I know all of our students know this history. Before it merged in 1972 with the University of Arkansas system and became the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. We continue to reflect on the great mission of this university and the milestones that it has achieved and the memories that were captured along the way, recognizing and appreciating our past. We continue to chart pathways to move forward toward a brighter future. We're on the road to higher heights. Ladies and gentlemen, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. This is great historical HBCU is on the rise, and ain't no stopping us now. Thank you.